Hungry Trilobyte podcast would like to start by acknowledging SoonerCon. The longest running pop culture con in Oklahoma has a new look, a new mascot, and a fantastic guest list. Join us in Norman, Oklahoma, June 30th through July 2nd, 2023, and meet celebrities such as Billy West, John Scalzi, Erica Harlicker, and John Swasey. Visit SoonerCon.com to reserve your membership.
On tap, we have our buddy Pete Doree back again. How you been, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's nice to see you. It's nice to be back.
Nice seeing you. You have been on my mind a lot lately because I think I mentioned way back when that I've been picking up a lot of the old Jimmy Olsen comics, and I've been focusing on the Jack Kirby era. I made a decision to just focus laser in on those, and all the time I'm looking through like, this feels like something out of Pete's book. I know where he's getting this from. So
yeah, I remember I did listen yesterday to the first time we met, and yeah, you were saying that you'd bought the Olsen Where Dark Side first turns out. I actually picked up a couple of Jimmy's recently, like really cheap. I couldn't believe it. I was like, yeah, I'll have those. Thank you very much. Yeah, great stuff.
it's a title that flies under the radar. I mean, we all love Jack Kirby, but it seems like there's a couple of projects he's done that nobody thinks of when they think of the quintessential Jack.
Yeah, but it's the weirdest one, isn't it? It's the one where he just went, hey, I'll just do this. Hell with it. It's a great run.
It feels like it's something that the DC realized didn't have a lot of legs left in it, but was still selling well enough they didn't want to axe it. And they said, well, if Jack wants to do it, let's just see what he can crank out of for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, the story, I don't know how true it is, but the story is that he said, just give me your worst selling book and I'll make it sell, which I could imagine him doing. So, yeah.
But it's your book now that I've really been focusing on because, like I said, I've read a couple more issues of Stan and Jack as you're coming out with them. And what's been tickling me, besides the fact that the great humor you have for creating it, and just to refresh the audience's memory, this is a book where classic comic creators end up being superheroes in their own right. And they actually have to fight the forces of evil using their own professional gifts. And it's gotten to the point now where I'm noticing you're not only picking on the creators and their little quirks and foibles, but you've actually made jokes about the advertisements in old comic books.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a thing on the back of I think the third one, which says something like other titles available, and there's things like Creepy Worlds and Uncanny Tales, which is the Alan Class books. I don't know if you know about those. They were a British thing.
Sorry.
They were these really, really cheap reprint books. I mean, they were practically printed on toilet paper, and by this guy called Alan Class. And he reprinted Marvel and Thunder Agents and loads of sort of pre-Atlas, pre-Marvel stuff. And you could only ever get them at the seaside, and none of us could ever figure that out. But, you know, when we all went on holiday to Great Yarmouth or somewhere like that, there were these Alan Class books and there was nothing else, so you bought them. But it was a way of getting all that other stuff, because Thunder Agents never came in and Charlton never really came in. So it was just reprints of that. And that particular ad is an ad that he used every single time, you know, by Creepy Worlds, by Uncanny Tales. There was hundreds of them, and they went on for decades.
I was talking with another creator named Zach Howard in a couple of episodes back and we just kind of commiserated that back when we were younger, where you got comics was as important as what you were reading, because you didn't have as many specialty shops. It wasn't the kind of thing where you went in laser focused to get your thing. You went to that corner store, whether it be a convenience store, a gas station, a drugstore, and you got what they had, or you went home empty-handed. And
that's right.
Was that, I assume it's similar in the UK?
Yeah, there was no such thing as specialty shops when I was a kid. It was all news agents and, yeah, as you say, gas stations and things like that. I mean, again, all of us over here love the Marvel black and whites of the 70s because you could only get them at the seaside as well. You could only get Warrens at the seaside. No idea why. So they became like special, no matter whether they were good or bad or indifferent. We all have these fond memories of them because you just couldn't get them. I mean, the black and white Planet of the Apes mag, if you go to any sort of mart in the UK, and you hear somebody go because they found the Planet of the Apes magazine, because you just never saw them. So they were special to us. Excuse me.
And when you see Stan Lee talking about his usual pattern of everything is hyperbole, everything is grandiose, and he talked about his true believers and his Merry Marvel crew, and there was a lot more truth to that than maybe we gave him credit for. We've made the effort to find these things. It was in many ways a club of people who knew it's like, okay, you may have to go to 3 different stores, but it's worth the trip.
Yeah, I mean that was his genius. I mean, I know we all know, and you and I have spoke before about Stan versus Jack, which is if people ask me, I'll talk about it. But I think in his own way, he was certainly a promotional genius, because I wanted to be part of the gang. My friends did. I've got one of my oldest friends still won't buy DC because he was completely brainwashed by Stan. It's like, you buy Marvel, that's it. So it worked.
And if it worked, was it that bad of a thing? I mean,
I don't think so.
We see the division all the time, getting people together and making them feel included. We're begging for that now.
Yeah, absolutely, because it was all, and as you say, because I put ads and things, and I've done a letters page in the trade called Let's Rap with Stan and Jack, and that's all about that. It's all about that inclusivity. And I read the bullpen bulletins as much as I read the stories and the letters pages. It was all part of one thing, and it all made you want to be part of it and part of the gang.
You go back and you read those old letter columns from that era, and you gain an appreciation for the fact that these people, without having the advantage of having wikis and reference volumes to go through, they wanted to make sense of these amazing fantasy worlds, and sometimes the only option they had was just to write Stan and ask what he thought.
Yeah, that's right. And later on, I was reading an old issue of Defenders yesterday. And it was very obvious that Steve Gerber was writing the answers. He wasn't some anonymous guy. And the same if you read like Killraven or Black Panther, it's Don McGregor answering those questions, which is fantastic. That's what you wanted, And you could tell it's Don because the answers just go on forever and forever.
So where is Stan and Jack going from here on out? Because I'm getting the impression that this is not a story that needs to be wrapped up anytime soon.
No, I mean, it's kind of the first 5 issues. Really, you can read the 5th issue on its own, but the first 5 issues is one story. And I kind of got halfway through the 5th one and thought, I need to end this so that I don't get bored and I can do new stuff, especially as the latest issue, I've got like 12 or 13 characters all flailing about. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do that again. That's crazy, because you're trying to fit them all in and give them something interesting to do. So the next one is going to be, as you may have seen, is going to be Giant Size Stan thing at last, which I've been threatening to do for ages, where Stan turns into a swamp monster. But I'm going to do that like House of Mystery or House of Secrets. I'm going to do like 4 or 5 short stories to keep me interested apart from anything else, and different guest stars in each story. And then after that, I'm going to do a heavy metal issue with Mobius and Drew Ye and Richard Corbin, who's going to be wandering around naked like Den. And then I'm going to do Don Martin's Madhouse, because I want to try and draw Stan and Jack like Don Martin would. So I'm not short of ideas, but they're all going to be one-offs, so that I don't go, oh God, I've got 5 issues of this to do, because I have to keep myself interested as well as everybody else, and you have to bring the changes so that people don't know what to expect. Like this time it's going to be 4 or 5 stories. Okay, next time it's going to be 3 stories. It's you just have to keep yourself and everyone else interested and surprised. Really.
And just to be clear, you're a one-man operation, so the story can only be told as fast as you can write and draw it.
Yeah, I was talking to Dave Cook, another creator on Twitter, actually. Yesterday. A lot of things happened yesterday, weirdly. So I was talking to Dave, and he was saying that what he does, because he writes and with various artists, but it still takes him ages as well. And he was saying what he does is he doesn't work his day job on a Friday, so he writes every Friday. What I decided to do with this one, because weeks were going by where I wasn't doing anything and there was just these mountains of blank pages. So what I decided to do was say, okay, every night after work, I will do half a page, no matter how I feel, how bad it is, whatever, I will do half a page. And I will know when I'm going to finish it. And I did finish it maybe like a week over my schedule. So that's what I will do from now on. Because otherwise you just sit there and go, I'm never going to finish this, you know? Because as you say, I do it all myself. So.
And that's one thing that I've had to get into with writers, and I include myself in this, and all the bad habits I'm about to confess to. I mean, it's you get to a phase where you just feel like you're never going to finish it, and
Yeah.
you wait for inspiration, or you give yourself excuses, and life does get in the way. I'm not saying it doesn't. But if you realize that even adding one more sentence is more than you had an hour ago, if you can get just a little bit more each day, I think half a page is great. If you can hit that, some people have said, well, you need to do
just
1,000.
Just pencils.
Sure. But I mean, just to say that I've had people say, well, you need to do 2,000 words a day. Well, I think that's a great goal, but it may not be realistic for some people. And if that means it takes longer to get your work done, it still gets done.
That's right. Yeah. And I've gone back and, I've done half a page and the next morning and go, oh, that's shit. I'll have to do it again. But that's okay. At least at least I know what I did wrong and I know how to fix it. And you can't wait for inspiration because it ain't going to just turn up on your door. You've got to sit there and make it happen, unfortunately. I mean, I look at it like a game of dominoes. Once you think of one thing, that connects to another thing and another thing and another thing and another thing. Just today, I was like, oh yeah, I know how I'm going to do Giant Size Stan and Jack. I know how that gag's going to work now. So I'm always like going, yeah, how does that work? How does that connect to that?
And let's say, for the sake of argument, you do have half a page and you wake up the next morning, like you said, and you just don't, it doesn't work. It's not for me. I can't put this out there. When you redo it, it doesn't take as long the next time. You already feel like you have a head start.
Yeah, that's right. Because I know what I did wrong, or I know what, if that panel looks dull and it doesn't work, that's okay. I now know how to do that. So you learn. I mean, it's self-evident, really, but you learn from your mistakes. Even one line, even one word is like, yep, I've done that much today. That's okay.
And I'm a big believer in note taking and sketching and getting ideas down on paper, even if they're not in concrete form.
Yeah.
Because like you said, that gets the connections going at some point. You can just start to say, there's something about the act of getting it out of your brain and onto paper that makes things move.
Yeah, and also you can, putting it down makes it work. I mean, again, Dave, when I was talking to him yesterday, he was saying that he walks around the house speaking his dialogue to make sure it has a rhythm and it works. Well, I do the same thing. I don't do it in Stan's voice, but I do go, okay, does that work? Would Stan say that? Would Jack say that? So these are all tricks that everybody does. I'm sure everybody does them.
No, I don't think they do, because
No?
the people who get it done do.
Well, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Sure. But
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people who are just convinced that they have to have it done right the first try. And like, there's literally nobody who's actually been published who will tell you that. Not one.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about you just have to put it, as you say, you have to put it down. And if it's crap, then you change it. And also you have to go, when I first put Stan and Jack out, as I think I've said before, I didn't really like my inking. I think it's better now. I think, it needs improvement, but then that's the job, isn't it? You just keep improving. But you have to put out what you can do at this point. You can't go, oh, well, I'm not Frank Frazetta yet, so I'll wait till I am, till I put something out. Because you're never going to be. So you put out what you can. And also, nobody sees the mistakes that I see. You know, there's a great cartoon. I don't know who did it, but I see it online all the time with an artist standing in front of his painting and the public going, "Wow, that's amazing," and he's going, "That leg is too short, that head's wrong." No one else sees that. So
Now,
just do it and put it out. What you got to lose, you know?
and I can still say, going back to Stan and Jack #1, when you're looking at this saying, well, I made these mistakes and I can do better these days. And that may be true. But the fact is, Stan and Jack #1 is what made me say, I like this story. I
Yeah,
want to read
yeah,
more of this. It's so hard to get that click in the reader that it's like, if you do that, please pat yourself on the back.
yeah. Well, I always look at it like I always look at Stan and Jack as you and I, or I and the reader, are in a pub having a conversation, and I'm going, "Remember when Stan said this? Remember when this happened?" And we're laughing about it, and that's it's, as you were saying before about Stan's inclusivity. That's what I aim for. That's what he inspired in me, and that's what I
Mhm.
want that comic to be. I want the reader to be with me and me with them. So even if the art originally, you know, I'm not saying the first issue was bad. I don't think it's
No,
bad
no,
at
no.
all. But I can do better now. Even with that, I think, okay, I did connect with you. You did laugh at the right bits, you know. So
And we've seen that mentality go horribly wrong when, somebody says, "Hey, I can do Star Wars better 30 years later." It's like, whoa, 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 let's pump the brakes here.
mm,
I mean, it's an easy example. It's almost a pinata of an example, but it's like, no, we think we like things for a reason. We enjoy
yeah.
things for a reason. Sometimes you just can't capture lightning in a bottle twice and just keep running with it.
Well, why not do your own thing? That's
Mhm.
like that. You know, how there's a great quote from Howard Chaykin where he says something like, "If you like something, don't just do it again. Figure out why it affected you, and write something that affects you and the reader again." Um, I've got no, you know, nobody's asking me. Obviously, I've got no interest in somebody else's stories, none at all. I mean, I wouldn't mind writing Daredevil, but no one's going to ask me. So.
So what are you reading these days?
A lot of indie stuff, really. I back a fair few things on Kickstarter. There's a thing called The Berg by Fraser Campbell, which looks really good, about a fat berg under the sewers that's attacking people. The art looks fantastic. And there's a guy I met at Thought Bubble, Ali Fell, who is amazing, absolutely amazing. He did a thing called A Trick of the Light, which is kind of a ghost story lesbian romance that's very much like the kind of spooky 70s TV shows that we grew up on. And his art is incredible. He's got a new thing out. Look him up, Ali Fell. Everybody look him up because he's amazing. Um, as I say, I met him at Thought Bubble when I was next to another artist whose name I can't remember, but he was the guy who drew Transformers for Marvel, and I've completely forgotten his name. But Ali came over and he said, "Hi, I'm Ali," and we both went, "We hate you because you're so good." But honestly, look him up because he's just brilliant.
I'll make sure I get everything in the show notes on my website, aaronbossick.com. That way
Yeah,
that, because I was just, when I was talking to Zach Howard, we're talking, apparently Kickstarter is now like the #1 publisher of comics. If you factor in all the indies getting pumped out of there, it's as big as the bigger brands, which I find
yeah,
hard to believe. And at the same time, I'm happy for it.
yeah. Well, a lot of pros do it as well. I mean, there was this big thing about it's still ongoing. This thing, Tales from the Quarantine. I don't know if you're aware of this whole thing. This
Mhm.
guy, he got when COVID was on, he got something like 100 cartoonists, including a fair few pros, to contribute stories to this thing, and then he ran off with the money, and it will never appear. So people are just putting their artwork up on Twitter, and he's going, "Well, that's mine. I own that." And, no, you don't, mate. And that's still ongoing.
Mhm.
So Kickstarter is a bit, I don't know.
Yeah,
I,
I do caution people, do your due diligence and understand the risks. I don't ever want to say it's as easy as going to a comic shop and swiping your card, but it does give people a leg up if you
yeah,
choose wisely.
Yeah, I mean that's a one-off. That is a one-off, to be fair. And Fraser and Ali will deliver because they always deliver. It's a shame that that kind of thing puts people off back in other stuff. But I'm kind of lucky, you know. I fund myself. I can afford to fund myself. A lot of people can't.
Mhm. And Ed, your comic it's a highly polished product. I mean, it feels there's a good weight to it. The printing feels sharp, and it's the kind of thing that you're glad to go pick up. And because I've seen comics that aren't. I'm not trying to name any names, but it's yeah.
Well, that's because I use Rich of Comic Print in UK, who is the tops. Everybody uses him. He's you always know he's going to do a good job. You know, I will always use him. Every issue, I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I wanted.
I'm not familiar with them, not being from the UK, so this is something I have to look into now.
Yeah, yeah. He's great. He's like I say, he's on Twitter and he pretends to be a real arsehole, but he's the sweetest guy. He comes on and he's like, "You're all talentless hacks. I don't know why I work with you." But then when you actually talk to him, he is the nicest guy in the world. And you
If
know,
you're
as I say, go on.
so if you're in the States and you're looking for a comic publisher, I've had great experience with Literati Press.
Okay.
They're in my area, and they treat their artists very well. The actual print quality is always top notch. So, yeah, hey, it depends on which side of the pond you're on.
Yeah, no, they're good people. As I say, that the guy behind Tales of the Quarantine, he's a one-off. He's
Yeah.
an absolute one-off. Everybody else is fine. And as I was saying, you know, before we started, if you go to Thought Bubble, the big indie con over here, everybody genuinely supports everybody else and wants everyone else to do well. And we all do completely different comics. Nobody does
Mhm.
what I do. Nobody does what Ali does. Nobody does what Fraser does.
One thing we have to get out of this idea that we're competing with each other as creators. There's this idea
mm,
that if you buy my comic, nobody else will buy it, or if I buy comic, I'm not going to buy his comic, and that's not really the way it works. People are going to go to these conventions and they're going to load up. They're going to buy comics from 5, 10 different creators.
mm.
You're all in this together.
Yeah, and it absolutely is like that over here. It really is. It's a real community. And as I say, nobody does what I do. Nobody does what Ali does. No, you know, everybody does something completely different. Um, so there is, again, there is something for everyone. I don't really, you know, I can't remember the last time I bought a Marvel or a DC years ago. I just don't care anymore.
There's a degree I feel like I have to keep up, but I'm actually branching out a lot into things from Image and IDW, and like I said, Literary Press and my locals.
Mm, yeah. Image, yeah, there's a few things from Image, but I think, as we said before, in terms of the superheroes, I've already read the best stuff. You know,
Mhm.
people I'm sure are doing good stuff, and I'm probably being unfair, but there's plenty of old comics for me to read if I want to read them.
Yes. I've gone, I think I said before, I've gone very much into the trades, but what I have found since we've talked last, the newer stuff for me benefits from letting it pile up a bit and then picking and choosing from what I find more interesting instead of going every month and getting the same issues and
Yeah,
going, if I say, well, out of this year, maybe these 3 issues appeal to me, just grab those 3 issues. That's worked
yeah,
pretty well for me.
yeah. I mean, I did like Human Target was I'm not so sure about the story, but the art was monumental. I don't know if you saw that. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow was great. Superman Up in the Sky was great. So, but I bought them in trades. Like, yeah, I was like, yeah, I just want a self-contained story of these characters that I love, and which has fantastic art.
Superman 78.
No, I've not tried that yet. I have seen it, but I
Oh,
haven't tried
yes,
it yet.
I mean, they've done a couple of those where they're trying to recapture the continuity of a movie or a TV show, and they've all worked pretty well. Like
Mm.
Batman 89, big fan of that. Batman 66, big fan. But Superman 78, it's like they just found the magic formula. It really feels like it's Superman 5.
Right, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I should check that out. What's the art like? I mean, I have seen it, but I can't place it.
It does really it does feel like it's Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder on
Right,
paper. Yeah.
right, right. I'm definitely going to get that then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to be, you know, the nostalgia buff, but I am, and that's my comic. So, you know, maybe I should.
Somebody once asked or made the point that the best version of your favorite superhero is the one that was published when you were 14 years old.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
And I'm guilty of that. I'm not going to lie.
Well, you know, in the trades, in some of the creator portraits they do, I do. I do. There's a portrait of Wally Wood that I did years ago, and I write underneath it something to the effect of, "He is why Daredevil is my favorite superhero." And he was the first artist that I went, "Holy cow!" You know, I can't believe somebody human did this. So yeah, that's absolutely true.
And sometimes I think what I like about this new wave of DC stuff is that if you admit that the characters work best at a certain time and place, let it be a period piece. That might
Well,
just be the missing ingredient.
yeah, I mean, like I said to you the first time we spoke, I really wanted the Luke Cage show to be set in the 70s
Mhm.
because that's where Luke Cage belongs, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
And to go back to Jack Kirby for a minute, one of the things that I love about his work, and I'm going to say that there's many artists that make me feel this way for different reasons. Jack Kirby had a way of capturing what it felt like to be in the future and to see alien technology before we had a really idea of what alien technology would look like. I mean, if you were to put an iPhone in front of people in the mid 50s and 60s, they would have just not known what they were seeing. And that same feeling is captured in Jack Kirby's work.
Yeah, well, that's the mother box, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's already decades ahead of everybody else. Um, I kind of get speechless when I talk about that stuff because I don't. It's just there's just so much of it, and there's so much amazing ideas on every page. Um, yeah, I mean, he was just incredible,
And
absolutely incredible.
and the way he would be able to capture detail in empty space,
Mm,
the way
I,
yeah. And you
I,
could, as
lo-
an artist, could, yeah.
I long for that. I long to be able to do that. I'm still learning how to do that. So, but yeah, he could do it in spades, and he could do it without thinking. You know, it just came naturally to him.
Like John Byrne is my go-to if I had to just say that my comic book world takes his shape. I mean, just because he made these incredibly futuristic and fantastic cities and machines in a time when we didn't have that frame of reference, when we didn't know what these things would look like when they really existed, and yet
Yeah,
it's still believable. It's not like in the 1930s when it's clearly a cardboard box with a coat hanger sticking out of it. No, it's like you believe it.
yeah, yeah. I'm in awe of people who can do landscape. Well, not landscapes, but environments, completely imaginary environments. I can't do that. That's not even something I don't think that I can learn to do. I just don't have that mindset. I really don't. Um, you know, I'm still learning that backgrounds, how important backgrounds are. I do them because they have to be done, and everybody hates doing backgrounds unless you're John Byrne. But I'm still learning how they're an important element of the design as well, and they can say something about the characters. So anybody who can create an imaginary city, hats off to them.
Have you and I ever talked about Bill Watterson?
No,
Okay. In case anybody's not familiar, he's the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, a comic strip that was popular for until the mid 90s. It ran for about 10, 12 years. And if you read his notes and his comments on how he did things, he was very into the artistry of the comics as a medium, and his backgrounds were gorgeous when the
mm-hmm.
newspapers would let him do it, because sometimes the time would, but he would do watercolors and different effects on them. And the coloring, I don't know if he ever touched a computer. He just literally
I think he
painted his
did.
comics.
No, I don't think he did. Those Spaceman Spiff strips, which is
Mhm.
difficult to say, um, that was purely just him wanting to do a sci-fi strip. You know, it was almost irrelevant what Calvin was doing, or when he was meeting dinosaurs. You know, it was just like, oh, I'm going to be Al Williamson this week. You know, He was another genius. I think, unless, I mean, Charles Schultz is the greatest newspaper strip artist, but I think Watterson isn't far behind him. He was incredible. And he did it right. You know, he went, right, I've done it now. Bye-bye. See you later. That's it.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely respect that. As much as I miss the comic, I think that the fact that he wanted to do X, Y, and Z and he did it and then just was content to step away
Mm.
speaks to the quality of his work, that he really feels like he put everything he had into it, saw the results, and was content. He didn't want the merchandising money. He didn't want the animated specials. He just wanted to do the work.
Yeah. And maybe, you know, maybe he thought, well, I've said everything I wanted to say. I don't need to do, because you can get to a point, obviously, where you just start repeating yourself.
Mhm,
And lots of artists fall into that trap, but he never did. And I like the fact it ends and it's limited, because it's perfect as it is.
mhm.
Because even Peanuts
Mm.
sort of went downhill towards the end.
Yeah, and Peanuts, I mean, I like it, but I don't seem to have the connection to it that a lot of my friends seem to have.
Right.
People see it as a deep and they understand the philosophical intent behind the characters, and I see it, but it just doesn't seem to grab me because I look at it like these kids are jerks. That's what I like. They're just really jerks sometimes.
Yeah, but kids are and people are, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, I am Charlie Brown, you know, completely. That is my personality, really, um, with a little bit of peppermint patty, I suppose. So I don't know. I mean, it's imprinting, isn't it? I mean, I don't even remember when I first read it, so I must have been 5 or 6. So it's such a huge part of my childhood. Because there were those little paperback collections. Again, like we were saying,
Mhm.
sometimes you'd go somewhere in England and all there was Peanuts books, so you bought them. Um, so it's a huge strip for me.
And see, now you're making that connection that I was referencing. You feel yourself in Charlie and to an extent Peppermint Patty, and you see that, and I guess I just never felt that click.
Oh, that's fair enough. I mean,
Yeah.
there are strips that I don't feel that people rave about, or characters. I mean, I don't. I'm not particularly a big John Wick fan.
Okay.
I'm like, it's okay. You know, everybody loves Keanu. Um, but to me, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I don't really see the fuss. So
I
some things don't connect, you know.
No, I hesitate to say this because it's a much different experience now, but the first decade or so of Garfield, I was a huge fan of.
Mm,
When he was still experimenting, when the plot would still go here, there, and everywhere, and the idea of capturing just the manic feeling of what it was like to just try to get inside this cat's head, that was a lot of fun for me. And if the comic is not anything now, I mean, it's just I haven't read it in 20 years. I got tired of it 5
mm.
years before that. But at the time, it was a lot. It was something that I found very, very fun.
See, I've never read a lot of Garfield. I think I've probably read the later stuff and just gone.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
I mean, Garfield without Garfield is a great strip.
yes.
That's genius.
That's a surreal experiment, and it just works on so many levels. And I guess, and I'm just thinking of this now, that's a little bit of the charm that I was seeing back in the day, is that you just didn't know what would happen, and sometimes the comics would take a very slightly twisted tone,
Mm,
and that's what I miss.
yeah, I mean
I'm not sure.
that's what I was saying before. You have to surprise people, don't you?
Mhm,
The worst thing is you know, there are strips like Funky Winkerbean that just
mhm.
go on and on for decades. Just it's still the same thing. It's still going on, and no one cares. You know, you're not surprising me. You should never give the readers, in a way, you should never give the readers what they want. You
No.
should you should give them what
Yeah.
you want.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I don't write my stuff for anybody except me, if I'm honest. Um, but I just hope it will connect, and it does seem to.
Well, there's so many people out there that if you put your work in front of enough people, provided you put everything you had into it, somebody's going to connect with it.
That's my theory, and I think that's true for everyone. Yeah, And I always say to people, like I said before, just put your stuff out. You never know. I didn't know this was going to sell. I had no idea. I thought there, maybe there's a couple of old gits like me who might like it. But, I was, the best thing that happened is again at Thought Bubble at the Con at Harrogate, so many kids came up to me and said, "Oh, I love Jack Kirby." I didn't say I love Stan, which is what I expected. I love Jack Kirby, which is fantastic, isn't it?
It is, because it shows those kids are starting to be interested in the history of their medium.
Mm,
Stan, you can learn about by watching Marvel movies. Jack,
exactly.
you have to want to go on Wikipedia or flip through the old archives, or do you have to put in the legwork to know about Jack, much less Steve Ditko or any other people that populate your books.
Yeah. Yeah, there was even a couple of I love Gil Kane,
Mhm.
And I was like, great, what have you read? What do you like? So that's really heartening. Not just for me, but for their memory.
Yeah, as we see comics transition into a much more, I mean, it's always been commercial, but at this point, it's commercial to the extent of Hollywood movies and video games. That's something that's very new to you and me, but it is the world of the kids that are growing up now.
Yeah, yeah. But isn't it great that they're obviously also going, oh, I'm going to get this trade. Oh, it's Jack Kirby. I'm going to get that. What's that about? That's fantastic. I was really, really happy about that, as well as selling the book, obviously.
Sure. And as much as people like you and I can complain about the way things are now, and we do, and that's cool, we're entitled, but you can look at this and say, these kids have the option to get, in some form or another, almost a century's worth of comics at their
Yeah,
disposal if they choose to
yeah,
read it. Uh,
yeah.
I'm a huge preservationist. Preservation above all else is important,
Me
and that
too.
is great for them.
Yeah, me too. You can get anything. You can get
Mhm.
absolutely anything now. I mean, I bought there's a trade, Chilling Tales of Sorcery, which is a mystery, like a House of Mystery thing that Gray Morrow did for Archie, which is about the most obscure thing ever. There's a trade of it. So I bought it. Yeah.
I had on a gent who was restoring the Micronauts comics from the 70s and probably
Okay.
early 80s. Yeah. And he just bought them up, ran it through his computer, scrubbed them up. Beautiful work. I mean, absolute top-notch work. He did it just to do it,
Yeah.
for no other reason.
Yeah.
That this
Have
was
you,
go ahead.
the guy, his name is Jose Villa, I'm going to pronounce his surname wrong. Jose Villabuena is a colorist, and he's recoloring Corbin's Neverwhere, and then he's going to do all the Den books. And again, he's on Twitter, and he shows you Corbin's pages, which I've obviously got the original trays from some years, and what he's coloured them as to make it more like Corbin's original art. And they're, blimey, it looks incredible. So everyone's going to buy that when it comes out.
That's incredible work, because I mean, for people who aren't familiar with art preservation, it's like, because number one, we have the issue that when you scan something and you see it on your screen versus printing it, there's subtle color differences between the original document and what's on your screen and what gets reprinted. And then you factor in that the paper is going to have yellowed, the dyes and the inks themselves will have faded. The
Mm.
technology to make the ink from back then may not exist anymore or may not be affordable. There are so many subtle differences and complications when it comes to coloring.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I saw something a while ago about every once in a while you go on eBay and you see Gil Kane's sketches for sale, like loads of them, loads of practice stuff that he did. They're all fading. They're all just going to vanish unless somebody scans them in. I hope somebody is.
Wow. And on one hand, I'm glad there's enough interest that people are buying them and grabbing them, but I hope they have the heart to get them properly mounted, preserved,
Yeah,
and archived if at all possible.
yeah, yeah. I think they are now. Like I say, if there's obviously enough readers who are going to buy the new reprints of the Corbin stuff from the 70s. So again, because kids can get anything, they want everything, and all of this stuff will be preserved. I mean, I was writing about Jean Day recently, who seem to have been forgotten over the last few years, but the Shang-Chi stuff is now back in print, which is brilliant. So I hope kids discover Jean Day, because he was bloody amazing. And he was like Steranko crossed with Eisner. He was that good, you know. So nobody these days, nobody gets forgotten, I hope.
Well, I hope your book doesn't get forgotten either. I hope that we
Oh,
get
so
more
do
people
I.
on that,
So do I.
because
No,
at the very,
yeah, no, it seems to be doing all right. I mean, you know, I sell every issue. You know, I sell them at cons, I sell them in the post. So, and people are always like, "What's the next one about? When's the next one coming out?" So, yeah, thank God people are interested in it, not just me and a couple of old gits.
are you going to move to the trade paperback and just start selling installments of that at cons?
Well, I've got the trade of the first 5 issues with lots of extra stuff. I mean, if, to be honest, Aaron, if I didn't have a day job, yes, I would do that.
Mhm.
But the way I look at it now is like I say, I did the 5th issue over 3 months. So theoretically, I could do 4 issues a year. In reality, that's probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be 3. So I'll try the issues for now, I think. But then, you know, you have that thing where you're at a con, and there is this is not even me making this up. There is this guy who turns up every year at Thornhill. I think he does it to everyone. And he turned up and he went, "Oh, this looks good." And then he opened one of the issues and he went, "Oh, it's in black and white. Are you going to do it?" And I went, "No. Oh no." And then he said, it goes on, right? And then he said, "Is it one complete story?" And I hadn't finished number 5 at that point. I said, "It will be once I finish the 5th one. I'll come back when you've done the 5th one." So I know he will come back this year and go, "Have you got a trade?" And I go, "Yes, I've got a fucking trade. Buy it." And he'll go, "Is it in colour?" "No, it's not in colour, mate."
Oh,
But I'm sure he does that to everyone.
I maybe I should. One of the few times I got to see Stan in person was at a convention where he was actually introducing Kevin Smith. And they had talked about the time working together on Mallrats. And he gave him such grief because he said that, "I saw your first movie and it wasn't any, I mean, it was all right. But, I could tell you were just getting started out. But the movie I was in, well, let's just say at least it was in color."
That's so Stan, isn't it?
Exactly.
I was the best bit in that movie.
It really was. It was. He had a presence. I mean, you enjoyed watching him on screen, but if you had the chance to see him in person, it really was a treat.
Yeah,
And you were glad he was representing our hobby as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, since he's been gone, who do we have? We don't really have anyone like that, do we?
I could think of some names, but it might be controversial.
Go on.
Gail Simone.
Yeah, Gail. Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily for the same stage presence per se, but the fact that she can rile up a crowd the way she does, major respect.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I can't. I mean, yeah, as you say, everybody else is kind of problematic, but everybody knows from, like you said, from the movies. Everyone knows Stan. All my friends are, "Oh, Stan's great, isn't he?" Well, yeah, he is, but there were some other guys. Oh, really? Yeah.
And as much as I have such respect for Jack, I'm just not sure he could have pulled off the razzle dazzle the way Stan did. Nor did he even want to.
No, he couldn't. He couldn't. I mean, as I'm sure you have, I've watched interviews with him, and because he was a genius, you couldn't understand a word he was saying because his mind was 3 steps ahead. And it was almost like he struggled to get all the ideas out because there were so many of them. I mean, I genuinely have watched interviews with him and gone, "What are you actually saying? Really don't understand what you're saying." But as you know, I don't have him talk like he talked. But he was 3, 4, 7 steps ahead of everybody else, and in fact 7 steps ahead of himself.
Mhm.
So no, he couldn't have done that, and as you say, he didn't want to.
No, and he's missed, and the industry is still trying to find its way around, like you said, finding another Stan.
Well, there won't be anyone, will there? I mean, who could possibly replace them? Because the world's different as well. No, I don't think so. Because, and also there's, as we've said before, because of social media, there is so much opinion and there's so much bullshit and there's so much. I mean, can you imagine if either of them were on Twitter at the moment, the grief they would get?
Mhm.
If Ditko was on Twitter, it just, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. I mean, I'm lucky I don't get any of it. Twitter doesn't work anymore, really.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. Even at cons, I don't get it. I mean, I do get people, as I say, come up and say, "What do you think about Stan versus Jack?" And I tell them that it doesn't really matter, because we all know Jack did 90% of it. So,
If we
what
were to
is there to
talk,
discuss?
yeah, if we were to sit here and talk about how, Stan and Jack fought and squabbled and didn't see eye to eye, we'd be right. But at the end of the day, they both wanted to put out that comic. That was key for both of them.
That's the
And
important thing. Yeah,
yeah, when those
yeah,
issues hit the newsstand, I'm sure they both felt like the job was done.
yeah, yeah. I remember somebody saying to me on social media once years ago, "Stan ruined my childhood." No, he didn't. He entertained you. What are you talking about? That's just nonsense, isn't it? Get over it. Because firstly, they're both dead.
Uh-huh.
Secondly, it didn't affect you personally. You were entertained, like I was. So shut up.
Comments like that tend to come from a place of, I found this story I liked, and I liked it in a certain way, and then they started telling the stories in a different way that I didn't like anymore. And
Mm.
that's okay. You don't have to
Yeah.
like every story just because you like the first one. Nobody ever said that was going to be the case.
No, no. Go and buy something else.
Yeah.
It's a consumer item at the end of the day. If you don't like, I don't understand those people. And God bless him, a friend of mine does do it. Like he has bought every Spidey. I think he's got as far back as about number 20 up to now. And he will regularly go, "Oh, Spidey's shit. It's been shit for 2 years." Then why are you buying it? What on earth are you doing? I don't get it. And it's like, oh, when another writer comes in, it'll be good again. Okay, we'll buy it then.
Mm-hmm. Like I
Um,
said earlier, you can look at a whole year's worth and pick out the stuff that you really do find interesting. You're allowed to do that. It's
mm,
okay.
yeah, yeah. I'm not precious about any of it. Like I say, I bought Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow because I love Supergirl and the art looked interesting and it was really good. It was like Heavy Metal had done Supergirl,
Mm-hmm.
which is a great idea, without the tits, obviously. Um, yeah, so buy whatever's interesting, and if you don't like it, don't buy it.
Yeah.
Certainly don't buy it again. That's ridiculous.
Okay. Well, Pete, you and I have a lot to be reading. We have a lot to be not buying, and we'll have to have that drink together sometime. Not
We
just yet,
will. We will.
but where can people follow the rest of your adventures on the web?
Well, as I've said, I'm on Twitter for as long as it works. I'm on Instagram for as long as it works. So it's Pete, as I said before, it's Pete Doree, not like the fish, DOREE. And you can buy Stan and Jack at petedoree.bigcartel.com. I'm also, as I said before, I'm also at Thought Bubble this year. I'm also at the Lakes Con this year, and hopefully at Nice Con in Bedford. So come and see me. Come and see me.
I'm going to link to everything you just mentioned, as well as the previous 2 episodes you've been on in the show notes.
Cool.
So, Pete, you are welcome back anytime you want.
Anytime you want me on, I'm here.